don't say a lot, but there are some people out there who take my opinions on things very seriously, which is hilarious to me. I find that kind of funny because I'm literally just a guy whispering, trying to relax you and talk basketball with you guys. So some of you guys take that a little bit to heart, which is totally fine. Like I said, a lot of people are very passionate about basketball, which is totally cool. I mean, obviously I am. So, and also because I have actually filmed this video before and trashed it. I didn't like how it went, how I tried to explain things and stuff. So, and also the video was like an hour plus long. I just kept rambling in that video. So, in this video, I'm going to try to cut it down a little bit and try to just get my points out really fast. Take about 2 minutes on each team that I'm going to be talking about, and go on from there. So, as you can see from the title, this video is about the best NBA team of all time. Now, I was going to come out with this video like weeks ago, but when like March Madness was still like a thing going on, but I trashed the video, so we're going back to this. So don't even really think about it as like a March Madness type thing. Don't worry about how the teams are ranked in the bracket. Don't worry about anything like that. But this is about the best NBA team of all time. Now, there are a lot of great teams on here. I'm just going to go through the list really fast, and then we're going to jump right into it. So, also, with that being said, let's give a check on the subscriber count that we've been going on here. Let's see. Okay, so right now, as I am recording this video, there is still 65% of you guys are not subscribed yet. So I'm gonna screenshot this, put it up on the video, and make sure if you are not subscribed yet, please, it would mean the world to me to subscribe. 35.5% of you guys are subscribed though, so thank you for that. But to the 64.6% of you guys, I mean, it's free. It is a free thing to do. So thank you so much if you are gonna do that. And also, let's like the video and just keep on supporting. So I'm going to put up a picture of the teams we're going to be talking about here now. This is my third attempt. Yes, not two, but third attempt on trying to film this video. So if I kind of rush, if I kind of seem like I'm annoyed or talking kind of fast, because I've already done this video three different times. So I'm super sorry about that. And I don't know if I said this before at the start of this video. This is based off of just talent. So this isn't the greatest team of all time. The title of this video is the best team of all time. So if we are talking about the best team of all time, that's what we're gonna be talking about, not the greatest. So a lot of teams have a lot of greatness surrounding that team, like who they faced off against, what does their record mean, the championship opponent they went up against. All I'm talking about is the team that whoever made this, I think Yahoo Sports made this sort of March Madness type of bracket, even though it's not a March Madness type style video. These are just the way the teams are stacked up, so don't worry about where they're placed and ranked. It's just who would win in a one-game elimination type scenario against one another. So I'm not going to go through all the teams right away, so just stick around and maybe a team that you like will pop up, or you can obviously just look at the screen and see for yourself. So first matchup we're going to be talking about is the 2017 Golden State Warriors going up against the 1989 Detroit Pistons. So the 2016-2017 Golden State Warriors went 67-15 with the coach Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr. They were first in offensive rating that year, second in defensive rating. In the playoffs, they swept the Portland Trailblazers, they swept the Utah Jazz, they swept the Spurs. I forgot the Spurs were in the conference finals that year. And then in the NBA finals, they beat the Cleveland Cavaliers 4-1. So, obviously this team is well renowned as a very talented team. This team had Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala. That was like their big starting lineup, with having, Steph, Klay, you'd have Iggy, Draymond, and then probably KD or Draymond at the 5. You can switch between the two of them, but KD and Steph were both averaging 25 points per game. Klay was averaging 22 points per game. Draymond obviously the super top heaviness of Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, both MVPs. You have Klay Thompson, the second greatest shooter of all time, one of the players who can shoot the ball, gets super hot, very faster than anyone in the league, honestly. And Draymond was, in his bag that year as well. Iggy was still relatively really good, and the bench was still really good as well. So, a lot of people are already going to have their opinions on who is the best team, if you've seen the graph already. But we're going to keep it rolling here and talking about the 1989 Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons had a record of 63-19, coached by the amazing coach Chuck Daly, RIP in the chat. They were ranked third in defense that year, second in opponents' points per game, so obviously one of the best defensive teams of all time. And they, in the playoffs, swept the Boston Celtics. Wow, that's a pretty good stat there. They swept the Milwaukee Bucks. They beat the Chicago Bulls 4-2. This was obviously before Prime, Jordan, and Scottie. And then swept the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals, which is a pretty hard task to do. But the Lakers at that point were not what they used to be in the early 80s, but that's still an amazing team. On their team here, you had Isaiah Thomas averaging 18 points per game, Joe Dumars averaging 17 points per game, Bill Laimbeer, one of the defensive enforcers they had on their team, Adrian Dantley, Mark Aguirre, Dennis Rodman averaging 9 points and 9 rebounds. This was before Prime Dennis Rodman. Then, Vinnie Johnson, Rick Mahorn, John Sally, James Edwards was a pretty good scorer as well, averaging almost 10 points per game. The team isn't, as deep as the Warriors, so that's why I think I would give the edge to the Warriors, and obviously top heavy wise. I don't know any of those players who are going to stop Kevin Durant, a 7-footer who can score at will. Adrian Dantley was a pretty decent forward at that time, but he was only 6'5" as their starting small forward. And then you have Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars, both at 6'3". Klay Thompson's like 6'7" himself. Iggy's like 6'7". I don't think that the matchup doesn't really work out so well. No doubt about it. Isaiah Thomas would lock down Curry, in my opinion. Curry would probably struggle a little bit, but everyone else in the Warriors would give it their all and get their own, probably. So, not probably a big surprise to anyone, but I'm taking the Golden State Warriors in this first round matchup. Next, we have the 1967 Philadelphia 76ers. Kind of hard to say, it's flipped around. They had a record of 68-13, coached by Alex Hannon. I've never heard of that coach before, but that's a good record. They were first in offensive rating, third in defensive rating, so that's pretty great. In the playoffs, they beat the Cincinnati Royals 3-1, and then beat the Boston Celtics 4-1. And in the NBA Finals, they beat the San Francisco Warriors 4-2. Okay. This was a 30-year-old Wilt Chamberlain-led team. He scored 24 points per game. This is before they counted for rebounds, but he probably averaged like 67 rebounds or something like that. But they probably averaged a lot of rebounds. And then you had Hal Greer, Chet Walker, Luke Jackson. Billy Cunningham was also a really good player back in that day, but that was a really early 23-year-old Billy Cunningham before he really got in his own. So obviously back then you only really needed one superstar to win in the NBA, and they had Billy Cunningham and Wilt Chamberlain, who were really good scorers, and obviously Hal Greer was averaging 22 points per game for them, their second leading scorer. Oh, actually, I read that wrong. They do account for rebounds, and Wilt Chamberlain averaged only 25 rebounds. So, kind of a down year for Wilt Chamberlain there on rebounds, but not too bad. And 8 assists, so that's pretty great. An amazing team, like I said. That was probably a pretty decent year for Wilt Chamberlain. But they're going to have to go against a very deep team here in the 2008 Boston Celtics. They went 66-16 that year, coached by Doc Rivers. Again, one of my favorite coaches in the NBA. They were first in defensive rating that year, so that's pretty dope. I didn't know that. In the first round of the playoffs, they almost lost to the Atlanta Hawks, 4-3, and then they almost lost again to the Cavs, 4-3, in the finals, in the Eastern Conference Finals. Sorry about that. And then Eastern Conference semifinals. Boston with Rondo, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett. That was probably the best starting lineup in the whole league that year, and for a long time actually, probably until LeBron got up with the waiting Chris Bosh in Miami, and obviously Kendrick Perkins there being like their defensive center. Again, this one in my opinion is not too hard to think of. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain could probably score a pretty decent amount of points on Kendrick Perkins, but I don't know if anyone else on that team would be able to really match the scoring output of Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett. Then you have the floor general of Rajon Rondo, and then their bench is just a little bit deeper in my opinion. James Posey was averaging almost 10 points. Eddie House was averaging almost 10 points. Sam Cassell was averaging almost 10 points himself. Defensive lockdown in Tony Allen. Glenn Davis back then was okay. And then you have the GOAT, Brian Scalabrine. Like, I don't know. In my opinion, I'm taking the Boston Celtics in this game. And I know for a lot of these matchups, you're going to be saying, oh, ASMballeR, you're just taking the newer team or yada, yada, yada. In my defense, the talent in the NBA nowadays, or even in the last 10, 20 years, is way different from how talent was in the 60s, 70s, and even in the 80s. Very different. So you have to take it into account talent-wise and how deep a team is, how much players they can use, yada, yada, yada. So it's not just based off of, oh, they have Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt Chamberlain's like a top 10 player of all time. You can't just do it like that. You have to be like, okay, well, in a real game, one single game elimination, who would win it in a matchup? And I think the Boston Celtics would probably just be too much on the offensive end to stop the Sixers. Now, defensively, sure, I guess the Sixers could probably win that way if the Celtics got cold, but I'm thinking if there was like a go time, like single game elimination, like life on the line, I'm taking the Boston Celtics. 1971 Milwaukee Bucks. They finished with a record of 66 and 16. 66 and 16, that's nice to say. They were first in offensive rating and first in defensive rating that year. Wow, that's pretty crazy. And coached by Larry Costello. The playoffs, they beat the San Francisco Warriors 4-1. Then they beat the Los Angeles Lakers 4-1. And then they swept the Baltimore Bullets. This was the very young, probably almost rookie Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, only 23 years old, averaging 32 points per game and 16 rebounds. Not too shabby. And then you had a 32-year-old Oscar Robertson here, averaging almost 20 points per game, 8 assists and 6 rebounds. Not too bad. Kind of out of his prime. It kind of looks like there. Then you have Bob Dandridge, averaging 18 points per game. John McLaughlin, 16 points per game. Craig Smith, 12 points per game. And Bob Boozer. That's a cool name, Bob Boozer. 10 points a game. So, not too shabby, I guess. Again, back then, you only really needed one superstar. But they had Oscar Robertson, even though he was a little bit older. He was almost 33 years old. And then a almost rookie Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, 23 years old. So, that's a pretty good team, in my opinion. Especially for that day and age. And on here before used to be the 1970 Knicks. Now, when I was looking through this list, and you might have picked it out too, they are missing a team, in my opinion. Even though this team did not win a NBA championship, I think they deserve to still have an account of being one of the greatest teams of all time. And that is, well, best teams of all time, and that is the 2016 Golden State Warriors, the year they went 73-9. Now you can argue they didn't win the championship, it doesn't count, yada, 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 yada. That's totally fine. If you want to make your own list, please go ahead and do that yourself. But just in my opinion, I think they should be at least on the list. So I put them in. I'm replacing them with the Knicks. From what I saw, the Knicks team was probably going to lose out of this bracket anyways. And no offense to any Knicks fans out there, I will be doing a Knicks rebuild here very, 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 very soon. But no offense to any Knicks fans, they were probably the least talented of the teams on this list. So I replaced them with the Warriors. If you want to not do that, put the Knicks in there. Please go on and do that. I would love that. But the Warriors that year in 2016 went to 73-9, coached by Steve Kerr as well, / Luke Walton. They were first in offensive rating that year, first in opponent's points per game. was like what happened, but it was just very, very entertaining to watch from game 1 to game 7, having that drama build and build and build to a great finale, in my opinion. No matter what team or fan you're a part of, I thought it was a really fun season to end to the season. Which, by the way, 2016 was the greatest year of sports of all time. Like, that was the year I think Villanova hit that buzzer beater to beat North Carolina. This happened. I think Tom Brady beat the Falcons and came back in that game as well. Like, so many things happened in 2016. Like, 2016 is probably my favorite year of all time, even in my personal life. Let's see here. So that team had, again, Steph Curry averaging 30 points per game, Klay Thompson, Harrison Barnes, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green averaging 14 points, nearly 2 steals, a block and a half, and 8 assists almost. That's crazy. Then you had Bogut, Sean Livingston, Festus Ezeli, Leonardo Barbosa, Brendan Rush, Maurice Space, Ian Clark, Anderson Varejao, Kevin Looney was on that team as well. So basically, same team with a little bit more of added big men with, Festus Ezeli and Maurice Spates, and Andrew Bogut as well. I really like this team. I was actually the Warriors were like my second favorite team. I remember going to California, visiting family, and trying to find a Warriors hat because I wanted to buy a Warriors hat at that time, but I never did. I never found one that I really liked, and the Warriors got really bandwagony, and I just stopped just following the team because they used to be one of my favorite teams, and it got weird, so I just stopped following them really. Yeah, so I think definitely the team deserves to be on the list, and in my opinion, again, it's like one of those things where, sure, big man matchup wise, Kareem could probably go for 50, 40, 60 points if he wanted to, but I don't think the scoring output produced enough from other players will be enough to really get them over the hump. Oscar Robertson would probably have a field day going up against Curry, because Oscar Robertson was like, what, 6'5", 6'6", Curry 6'3", not too heavy weight on him, but I think they'd have a very hard time trying to outscore this Warriors team. Let's see here. The offensive rating so far with the opponents. No, their points per game was 118, and then for the Warriors, it was 115. But then you also take into fact, talent-wise in the NBA today than back then, and yada yada yada. I think I'm gonna have to go with the Warriors, and I don't think that's a bad answer. Again, I just have to think of talent-wise. This one's really close, but I'm taking the Warriors. This one is really, really close. I'd like to see this entire bracket in like 2K and see how 2K would see it happen. I tried to do that, but there are some teams on this list that aren't in 2K, so I had to do that all manually, which would take forever. And I've already tried to film this video 3 times, so I'm taking the Warriors. Next, we are on to the 1972 LA Lakers. They had a record of 63-13 here with Coach Bill Sharman. Never heard that coach before. They were first in offensive rating and second in defensive rating that year. They swept the Chicago Bulls in the first round of the playoffs. Then they beat the Milwaukee Bucks 4-2, and then beat the New York Knicks in the NBA Finals 4-3. this is 1 year before. Yeah, the year before I think the Thunder made the finals, right? Or the year after the Thunder made the finals, and they lost the Miami Heat. But in this year, they made it to the finals, the Spurs, and they beat the Miami Heat 4-1. Pretty crazy, yeah. Actually, I'm trying to think. No, because I think, yeah, because Dallas beat Miami, then Miami beat the Thunder, then Miami beat the Spurs, and then I think this is the one where the Spurs beat Miami the last time, and then LeBron leaves after this season. I think that's what happens. At least that's what I think. I'm not too sure about that. Okay, on the team they obviously had Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, who is a 37. Wow, Tim Duncan was 37 in 2014. That's absolutely insane. A Kawhi Leonard averaging 13 points per game, two steals. That's beautiful. Then obviously Ginobili as well, but then the deepest teams I've ever seen have always been Spurs teams with Bellinelli, Diaw, Danny Green, Tiago Splitter, Patty Mills, Corey Joseph, Matt Bonner, the Sniper, the Red Rocket, and Aaron Baines. We all know Aaron Baines the GOAT now, but yeah, just such a deep team. All knew their roles perfectly. Tim Duncan knew how to play exceptionally well at 37. He averaged 15 points per game, 2 blocks, and 10 rebounds. Like, Tim Duncan is one of the greatest players of all time. Dude made the playoffs for 19 straight seasons. Like, it's dumb. It's crazy. Man. Again, in my opinion, I think the Spurs are just too deep. And they have Kawhi, which back then he won a Finals MVP for stopping LeBron James, even though LeBron was averaging 30, almost 30 that series. Putting Kawhi on Jerry West or Gail Goodrich, like, they're done. They're locked up for the whole game, 100%. And then you have Ginobili off the bench still. Man, I think I'm still gonna take the Spurs. And not only that, it's also because maybe if it was prime Chamberlain and Jerry West and Gail Goodrich, maybe I'll give them more of a shot. But that's just a 35-year-old Will Chamberlain born in 1936. So maybe if it was prime Chamberlain, I'd give him more of a shot. But I'm gonna take the Spurs here. Again, I know people are gonna say, ASMballeR, you're just taking the younger teams, yada yada yada, yada yada yada. I mean, that's not my fault. I mean, teams are just more talented nowadays than they were back then. There are gonna be some upsets probably in that sense later on, but just right now, I think that's so far how the bracket is sort of lining up. So yeah, let's get on to the next side of the bracket now. Okay, so now we are on the other side of the bracket. And on this side of the bracket, we have the 1985 and 1986 Boston Celtics. A great team, obviously. They were third in offensive rating that year, first in defensive rating. Wow, that's exactly what you want in a team. They went 67-15, coached by Casey Jones. The first round of the playoffs, they swept the Bulls. I think that was the year that Michael Jordan scored the most points in a playoff game, right? Isn't that the one he scored like 60-something? I think that was that series. And then they beat the Atlanta Hawks 4-1, and in the Eastern Conference Finals, they beat and swept the Milwaukee Bucks. And in the finals, this was a disappointing finals for them, I remember, because they wanted to face off the Lakers, who beat them last year. But in the end, they beat the Houston Rockets 4-2. And in my opinion, they probably would have beat the Lakers. They would have probably beat the Lakers that year in the finals that they met. This Celtics team was great. I just watched a documentary about them and the Lakers not too long ago. And you have a prime 29-year-old Larry Bird averaging 26 points per game, almost a block, 2 steals, 7 assists, 10 rebounds. Oh my god, dude, Larry Bird, again, if he's not in your top 10, you're crazy. Kevin McHale, 21 points per game, nearly 10 assists, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Dennis Johnson, Robert Parrish, Danny Ainge, Bill Walton off the bench. Like, come on, Big Bill. I love Big Bill. Bill Walton's one of my favorites. Rick Carlisle was on that team as well. I didn't know that, but again, not a super deep team. But man, you have Bird, McHale, Robert Parrish. Like, that's crazy. Danny Ainge, Bill Walton. That's a tough team, honestly. But they're going up against the 2015-16 Cleveland Cavaliers. This is probably going to be my toughest decision of the whole video. Let's see here. The Cavs here went 57-25 that year with Coach David Blatt / Tyronn Lue, which is funny that they fired David Blatt even though he had a better record than Tyronn swept the Detroit Pistons. They swept the Atlanta Hawks. They beat the Toronto Raptors 4-2. And in the NBA Finals, they came back down 3-1 to the Golden State Warriors, the greatest team at that time, the best team, I guess, with the greatest record. Wow, this is really tough. Okay, let's check out who's on that team. So we have LeBron James here at 31 years old, averaging 25 points per game, almost a block, steal and a half, and 7 assists, 7 rebounds. Wow. Kyrie Irving, 20 points per game. Kevin Love, 16 points per game. Then you have players like J.R. Smith, Tristan Thompson, Matthew Dellavedova, Iman Shumpert, Mo Williams, Richard Jefferson, Timothy Mozgov, Channing Frye, Anderson Varejao, the Sniper, James Jones, Dante Jones as well. He averaged 13 points per game. That's crazy. I might get a lot of heat for this, but I think this might be the first time I pick a retro team to beat a newer team. Just because of the fact that Larry Bird was so clutch, and if it's a close game, I trust Larry Bird more than LeBron. And no offense to LeBron, I think LeBron's better. Like, I'm not crazy, but man, if it's a close game, man, Larry Bird is probably or at least one of the clutchest players in NBA history. Then you have Kevin McHale, who just abuse anyone in the post. Even Kevin Love. Kevin Love's only like, what, 6'9", 6'10" on a good day. Tristan Thompson was the same way. He was only about 6'9", 6'8". So, I think I'm taking the Boston Celtics. And sure, Cleveland has a good bench, but it's not like they're great players. Obviously, JR at that time was really good. And Mo Williams, who was 33, he was okay that season. Almost averaged 10 points. Oh man, sure, LeBron could definitely win that game. It's very close, but I'm just gonna take the Celtics. I have not taken a retro team yet. I think this is a smart decision though to take one now. That Celtics team was crazy. That Celtics team was on a roll. They really found themselves. I mean, that team went 67 and 15. Like that's crazy. Third in offensive rating, first in defensive ratings, third in opponent's points per game. My God, yeah. I'm gonna take the Celtics. I'll take the Celtics. I have the 1987 Los Angeles Lakers. This is a team that also is very close to that Celtics team. They went 65 and 17, coached by Pat Riley, an amazing coach and owner now of the Miami Heat. They were first in offensive rating that year, obviously because that is the Showtime Lakers. In the playoffs, they swept the Denver Nuggets, then they beat the Golden State Warriors 4-1. Swept the Seattle Supersonics in the conference finals, and then in the NBA finals, they went up against the Boston Celtics and beat them 4-2. Let's see here. So we have here Magic Johnson, obviously prime 27-year-old Magic Johnson, averaging 24 points per game, almost a block, almost 2 steals, 12 assists, and 6 rebounds. Dang, that is crazy. James Worthy averaging 19 points, Brian Scott averaging 17, Kareem averaging nearly 18 points, a block, and 7 rebounds. Not too shabby. AC Green, Michael Cooper, Michael Thompson, Karambis. Wow. Again, a pretty good team. Having Michael Thompson and Michael Cooper on that team as well was pretty crazy, especially with Byron Scott. Like, the team was 6 or 7 man deep. Yeah, they're going up against the 2013 Miami Heat. Yeah, 2013 Miami Heat. That's a squad. They went 66 and 16. Coached by Eric Spoelstra, second in offensive rating, 9th in defensive rating. In the playoffs, they swept the Milwaukee Bucks. They beat the Bulls 4-1. Then they went to a Game 7 against the Pacers, which that Pacer team, a lot of people forget about. They always say LeBron had an easy ride in the finals. Not true at all. This Pacers team probably could have and probably should have won a championship during this time. That team was crazy on the defensive end. They beat them Game 7, and then they went on to play another Game 7 series against the Spurs and beat them in the finals. On that team, you had LeBron at 28. Again, prime LeBron, averaging 27 points, a block, 2 steals, 7 assists, and 8 rebounds. That's tough. That's tough. You have D-Wade averaging 21, Chris Bosh averaging 17. Then you have players like Mario Chalmers, Ray Allen, Shane Battier, Norris Cole, Udonis Haslem, Mike Miller, Chris Anderson, Rashard Lewis was on that team as well. Juwan Howard, the Sniper, James picks have been really tough for me because obviously it's going up against LeBron. And LeBron is, in my opinion, the best player of all time. He's not the greatest, but he's the best. He's the most talented player of all time. All-around game. Then you have D-Wade, but D-Wade was like 31 at that time. And Bosh was decent. He was good, obviously. And that team was deep as well. But is it better than the Lakers with Kareem? And Magic was on a tear as well. James Worthy was averaging 20. Byron Scott, 17. I'm trying to think how they play as well. You know, in my opinion, I think I have to take one of the Miami teams. One of these LeBron teams. I think I'm gonna take the Miami Heat. I'm gonna take the Miami Heat. I don't think that there's either decision is wrong, obviously. And I probably said this before earlier in the video, but like, my opinion doesn't matter. You can click off the video if you want to. Like, I don't care. So it's like I'm just a guy making, you know, videos trying to entertain, relax, yada yada yada. That's just me. I'm just a guy on YouTube. You have your own opinion. I'd love to hear it down in the comments. Obviously, be respectful to me and everyone else in the comments. You know, it's just a video. You know, just other people's opinions. But you know, I think LeBron would probably get it done. I think D-Wade would go on one of those, you know, classic D-Wade, you know, runs where he can look like he can score 40, 50 points again. Chris Bosh wasn't no scrub back then either. I think, sure, Kareem could have gotten a lot of points, but Kareem at this time was 40 years old. So, like, that's kind of tough to have been playing in that type of game, in my opinion, especially with the Heat having a lot of big bodies to throw at him with Chris Anderson and Udonis Haslem and Bosh, yada yada yada. Sure, guard play-wise, they would have been pretty decent, but I think Pattier, LeBron, D-Wade were all really good wing defenders. And then scoring-wise, I don't think they could really keep up. Sure, the numbers back then looked really nice, but in today's NBA, it's kind of hard to pick a team to go up against that. So, I have the 83 76ers. They went 65-17, coached by Billy Cunningham. In the playoffs, they swept the New York Knicks. Then they beat the Milwaukee Bucks 4-1 in the playoffs, and in the NBA Finals, they swept the Los Angeles Lakers. Not too bad. I wonder who was on that Lakers team. I'll check it out later, but this is the Moses Malone Sixers team with Dr. J, who was a little bit out of his prime at this time, was 32 years old. But both of them averaged almost 25 points per game. Moses Malone averaged 15 rebounds, so that's pretty crazy. Two blocks as well. Then you had Maurice Cheeks, Andrew Toney averaged 20 points per game. I have no idea who that is, but man, that 20 points per game is tough. Bobby Jones, Clint Richardson, and that's about it. That's only the players I really recognize. Pretty decent team, very top heavy with Moses Malone and Dr. J. I think Moses Malone won MVP that year as well, because I know he has one, and I think that's probably the season he probably won the MVP. But they have their hands full because they're going up against the 2001 Los Angeles Lakers now. The regular season record is not really what this team is really honored for. They are 56-26, a pretty decent record, definitely above average. Coached by Phil Jackson, again, one of the greatest coaches of all time. They were second in offensive rating that year, and that's pretty insane. But in the playoffs, they swept the Blazers, they swept the Kings, they swept the Spurs, and only lost one game to the Philadelphia 76ers. But in my opinion, they probably just lost that game just so they could, like, win on their own court or something like that. Like, I don't know how the finals works that way, or if they did. Yeah, I think they did win on. Did they win in LA? I don't remember actually, but I mean, come on, like, that team definitely could have went undefeated in the playoffs if they really wanted to. But gotta give props to AI. But yeah, they only lost one game in the playoffs. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. They had a 22-year-old Kobe Bryant who averaged almost 30 points a game that season. Jesus. 2 steals, 5 blocks, 6 rebounds. Then you had Shaq. Definitely the best big man of all time. Not greatest, but the best talent-wise. Averaged 28.7. 0.2 points better than Kobe. 3 blocks and 13 rebounds. Wow. And then you go down the list with Derek Fisher, Horace Grant, Rick Fox, Ron Harper, Brian Shaw, Robert Horry, Isaiah Ryder, Tyronn Lue. A lot of good role players. A lot of good role players. So if we're talking about in a game, Moses Malone would probably have to go match up against Shaq, and I think Moses Malone, let's see how tall Moses Malone was. was 6'10". Shaq at that point in time was probably, what, 7'1", 7'2". I know people shrink over time, but, Shaq was definitely not just 7 foot at that time. Shaq was definitely like 7'1", 7'2". I think he could have some good, shots at Shaq, but there's no way he's scoring more than Shaq. Kobe Bryant on a, 33-year-old Dr. J. Dr. J was really good and really athletic, but this is a 22-year-old Kobe Bryant who had a killer instinct already. And plus the team is probably just deeper on the Lakers, so I'm going to take the Lakers on this one. Dominant Shaq and Kobe, they probably scored 60 points by themselves and then fill it in with the rest of the role players. I love Dr. J. The Sixers at that point were a really exciting team. But I think depth-wise, how they play and everything like that, I'm going to take the Lakers. And I don't think that's a bad pick at all. Next we have the 96, 72, and 10 Chicago Bulls. Make sure, I'm going to post this on Sunday, so make sure you're watching the Michael Jordan documentary on ESPN. Make sure you're watching that, it's pretty interesting. They went 72 and 10. They were coached by Phil Jackson. First in offensive rating, first in defensive rating. In the playoffs, they swept the Miami Heat. They beat the Knicks 4-1. They swept the Orlando Magic. And in the finals, they beat the Supersonics 4-2. So, pretty decent opponents. Obviously, a lot of people say, like LeBron had it easy to the finals every year, yada, yada, yada. Well, and no offense to any of these teams, but Miami back then, New York back then, pretty good. The Magic back then, sure, I guess. And the Supersonics were good at that time, so some pretty decent competition as well. So obviously you had a 32-year-old Michael Jordan averaging 30 points per game, 2 steals, 4 assists, and 6 rebounds, not too shabby. Then you have Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen averaged 20 points per game, almost 2 steals, 6 assists, and 6 rebounds, not too bad. Then you had Dennis Rodman, averaged 5 points, but 15 rebounds. That's crazy. Players like Luke Longley, Tony Kukoc, Ron Harper, Steve Kerr. That's about it. I know the Bulls had 7 people. I could probably name off the top of my head, and then everyone else, all the rest of 15 players. I didn't know they were 15 deep. I didn't even know that they had a lot of players on that team I didn't know anything about. And they're going up against the 64-65 Boston Celtics. Wow, a dynasty of their own. They went 62 and 18, coached by Red Auerbach. Again, one of the greatest coaches of all time. They were 7th in offensive rating and 1st in defensive rating that year. In the playoffs, they beat the 76ers 4-3, and in the finals, they beat the Lakers 4-1. Sorry if you can hear that. Wow, so they only had 2 series in the playoffs that year. Let's check out the per game stats. So they had Bill Russell, obviously. Bill at this time was 30 years old. He averaged 14 points, basically 25 rebounds. Jesus Christ, that's crazy. He had Sam Jones, averaged 26 points per game. Tom Sanders, John Havlicek averaged 18 points per game. Tom Henson, I think that's how you say it. 14 points per game. Willie Knowles, 10 points per game. Not too bad. Obviously, at that point in time, Bill Russell was an amazing player, and you already had a great player in Sam Jones and John Havlicek, so they had 3 basically superstars on the same team in Celtics that year, so that's pretty insane. But come on, you cannot go against the 72 and 10 Chicago Bulls. That's again, Michael Jordan was on another level, and it really showed throughout that entire season. Him and Scottie clicked very well, and they knew, let's just dominate. And boy, did they dominate, dude. 72 and 10. That's hard. You think how crazy it is about the Warriors doing it nowadays. I say teams nowadays are probably more talented than back then, but 72 and 10 back then in the 90s, that's tough. Especially the first time any team has ever seen that happen. They were in my opinion, they were the first super team in any sports team in history. You know what I mean? Fans were going crazy for them. They're rock stars. I'm gonna take them to beat the Celtics though. The Bulls definitely have some big bodies. To throw at them Luke Longley was 7'2", John Sally 6'11", James Edwards, 7 foot. They have a lot of big bodies, and especially with Dennis Rodman, who would probably guard Bill Russell, because I think Bill Russell at his prime was maybe 6'9", 6'8", playing center. So I think that'd be a pretty fun matchup to watch. But I'm gonna take the Bulls, and I don't think that's a bad answer as well. So now I'm going just to start going rapid fire, because I'm sure I've been recording for a long time, probably like 2 hours or so. So I'm gonna try to get this down pretty fast. So back on the other side of the bracket, we now have the 2017 Warriors going up against the 08 Celtics. I'm gonna take the Warriors. This is a very interesting matchup because they kind of play in the similar era of basketball. But again, I don't know who's stopping Kevin Durant. I guess you would put Paul Pierce on him, or maybe Kevin Garnett. One player's too short and one player's not fast enough, so KD's going off. Then you have Clay and Steph and all those players. They're probably both maybe equally as deep, but obviously the Warriors had more talented off the bench with, Iguodala, unless they're doing that 5-man lineup where they have Iguodala and Draymond in the lineup, the starting lineup already. That's pretty tough to do. But I'm taking the Warriors. That's not too hard of a matchup, even though the Celtics at that time were really good. Then we have the 2016 Golden State Warriors going up against the 2014 Spurs. Now this is very close. This could really go either way. Because again, these teams are very close in time where they played against each other, obviously 2016, 2014. But man, that's tough. And a single game elimination. Didn't the Spurs play the Warriors in the playoffs that year and the Warriors beat them? But that was 2 years later. Tim Duncan would have been like almost 40 that year. Tim Duncan was 37 when he played in 2014. I'm just gonna say Warriors again. I'm just gonna say Warriors. Steph Curry at that time was untouchable, like unanimous MVP. Clay was still doing his own thing. Harrison Barnes was a good role player as well. Draymond was in his bag that year, like I said before. Then the depth they had, I'm gonna take the Warriors again, which is kind of shady, maybe. I don't know if you guys like that. Like I said before, obviously be respectful, but I'd like to hear your guys' opinions down in the comments. Again, I didn't make the only thing I switched out were the Knicks, and that's the only thing I fixed about this. I didn't put the teams in the spots or anything like that. They're not ranked in any specific way, so sorry if that kind of ruffles some feathers, but I'm gonna take the Warriors. They're just so equally in time zones that I can probably tell that the Warriors would probably beat them. Next we have the 86 Celtics and the 2013 Miami Heat. And wow, man, this is really tough. Again, this is like the same scenario, obviously with the 16 Cavs, but this is prime LeBron. Like LeBron in that series was good, but overall that season LeBron was pretty meh. But this is prime LeBron James, dominant LeBron going up against Larry Bird, Kevin McHale. Man, I'm gonna take the Heat and pick the Heat. I think the Heat would probably beat them, because in my opinion, I think the Heat that year were probably better than the Cavs that season. And that was close for me, but I think the Heat were probably better with having D-Wade and Bosh and prime LeBron. So I'm going to pick the Heat. No offense to any Celtics fans. Like I said before, I already praised the Celtics enough. But I'm going to take the Heat as an upset team, maybe. Of course, the Celtics could beat them. Any of these teams could beat each other, like I said before. Maybe I should have done this in 2K, made 2K pick what was going on, but not a lot of these teams are in that game, so I'm just gonna take the Heat. Yeah, that's fine. Like I said, I'm just a guy, just giving my opinion. It doesn't really matter. Just trying to be here to relax you. And then we have the 0-1 Lakers going up against the 96 Bulls. Shaq in this series is scoring 120 points probably. Shaq is dominating everything. But I'm gonna take the Bulls because obviously, Michael Jordan's, in my opinion, can I say that? The best perimeter defender. He's one of the best, for sure, no doubt about it. And he, if you take Kobe and Michael, Kobe's just an off-brand version of Michael. No offense to Kobe. Kobe a GOAT still. But I'm going to take Michael and Scottie in that team against the Bulls. Yeah, Warriors, because basically all you have to do is take out Harrison Barnes, plop in Kevin Durant, and you have the 2017 Golden State Warriors. So I'm taking the 2017 Golden State Warriors. No big surprise. Probably everyone at the start of this video probably knew that they're going to be in the finals anyway. This Warriors team is unfair. It's stupid crazy. So, and then at the other end of the bracket, you have the 2013 Miami Heat going up against the 96 Bulls. Again, this one could really go either way. I know I keep saying that, but I think I'm going to take the Bulls just because, again, I probably trust Michael Jordan in like a season. Like if this was a 7-game series, I think the Heat would probably win in like 6 games, honestly. I think if they had more chances, more time to relax, I think the Miami Heat would win. But if it's a, cold-blooded, like life on the line, 1-game elimination, I'm taking Michael Jordan in that Bulls team, man. Like, they were ruthless. And I guess now we are in the finals with the 2017 Golden State Warriors going up against the 96 Bulls, which is usually what everyone has. So, honestly, I probably could have just skipped this video, just done these 2 teams, because this is the only 2 teams really people talk about when they talk about the best team ever assembled. And the Bulls at this point were amazing. 72-10 is so hard to do. They dominated opponents left, right, and center. This was probably prime, like, GOAT Michael Jordan, greatest of all time. Like, this was his year, honestly. And then you had Scottie Pippen, arguably his best year as well, with Michael Jordan, not without Michael Jordan, because without Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen looked like a top 3 player in the entire league. And then all the role players they had with Steve Kerr, and they also had Dennis Rodman averaging 16 rebounds a game. Like, they're definitely the greatest team of all time, in my opinion. They're honestly probably the greatest team of all time. What they meant to basketball at that point in time, they were rock stars. They were the Beatles of sports. Like, in my opinion, that's definitely the greatest team of all time. But this is the best team of all time. And honestly, I do not see any team better assembled than the 2017 Golden State Warriors. So I'm taking the Warriors to beat the Bulls. If it's just 1 game, like, sure, you could have Scottie on Kevin Durant. You can have Michael Jordan on Clay. But then you have Steph still just scoring buckets on you from half court. But maybe you put Michael Jordan on Steph. But then you have Klay Thompson who can score 60 points in 3 quarters. Like, just the scoring value of the Warriors at that point in time with Sean Livingston and all those other good role players they had on that bench with Iggy and Draymond as well. Like, that's definitely a matchup to see, and maybe I'll put it in 2K one of these days. But if we're talking just based off talent, best players, single game elimination, who was the better team, I think the 2017 Golden State Warriors is the best team ever assembled of all time. Not the greatest. I don't think they're the greatest team of all time, and a lot of people have different opinions about that. But in my opinion, I think they're the best and most talented team ever assembled. That team is unfair. That team knew everyone in the entire world, basketball world, knew they were going to win the NBA Finals that year, and it happened. So it wasn't that big of a deal. So yeah, I really hope this video worked out. Hopefully I can edit this video fast enough for you guys to get it out to you guys on Sunday. So thank you so much for watching this video. Again, if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. I'm trying to hit 5K subs by February, so got a little less than a year to do that. So I'm thinking about doing giveaways at that point in time, but I feel like that's kind of forced. That's a little bit forced, but I've been thinking about it. Let me know what you guys think about that. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Please give the video a like. I know you guys are smashing with the like button. I feel all the love and support. I definitely need it. Times now are tough, and you guys, comments, liking the video, emailing me, yada yada yada. You guys are amazing, and I love you guys for that. So thank you so much for that. I really hope you're doing safe. I hope you're being safe, being smart, being healthy. Go outside, enjoy the weather a little bit. It's getting a little bit nicer in my area as well, even though I'm wearing a beanie. But that's just because we're all in our quarantine flows, like I said before. We're all just looking trashy. I know I am for sure, but thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in my next video very, 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 very soon. Alright, guys.